By way of introduction, my name's Kyle Forrest, and there's a couple of hats that I wear that I'll tell you about before we get going. One is that I work with business executives and CHROs on people and talent topics, primarily in the technology sector. I live in Los Angeles. I've got 2 daughters and 2 dogs, and youth soccer refereeing is what really keeps me busy on the weekend right now. The other hat that I wear is I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for our human capital practice. And so that means I'm responsible for the research and insights that we bring to market across various channels in collaboration with a number of organizations, inclusive of Phenom. So I'm really excited this afternoon to share a preview of our 2025 Global Human Capital Trends Report with you all. It's the longest longitudinal study of its kind. This is the 14th year we will be launching it, and it's coming out just around the corner. So we're excited to dig in. So Kristen?
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kristen Startup, and also within the human capital practice at Deloitte, I focus in working with HR leaders and their organizations, specifically around digital technology and digital workplace solutions like Phenom. I serve and wear multiple hats just like Kyle and so many of us do as the lead alliance relationship partner for our alliance between Phenom and Deloitte, which we were so proud to announce today publicly as a part of this event. So you all are here in the room where it happened with us, so thank you for joining us. And we're going to go through some of the trends, and my focus today will be to help bring to life how the Phenom solutions in particular, as you're considering wherever you are on your journey with Phenom, might be an enabler for some of the things that Kyle's going to share that we uncovered in our research this year.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to start with a quick hands up in the audience. Who has read a trends report before?
Oh,
okay,
wow.
Actually a majority. Thank you for reading in the past. For those of you who haven't read it before, I would encourage you to visit the website and certainly dig in this year because these are topics that are not only for HR talent professionals. These are topics that are on the top of the mind of C-suite executives, board of directors, private equity operating companies, right? So these are topics that are germane to all roles in an organization across all industries and sectors. And what we found in this year's report was really building on a concept that we introduced in 2024, which is that it's critically important for organizations when they make decisions and convey that decision internally and externally to focus on the business outcomes and the human outcomes. Why is that so important? So that way your workers, your customers, your partners, your shareholders really understand the full picture of what you're trying to accomplish with a decision. But what we've seen in our tagline for this year's report, there's a lot of tensions that leaders are facing. There are internal tensions, there's external tensions, and there's an opportunity that we believe organizations have to turn tensions into triumphs, or really in a time of uncertainty or where every news organization, academia, et cetera, talks about the only constant right now is a constant state of disruption, is a constant state of uncertainty, right? And so how then can you as leaders turn uncertainty into opportunity, right? And so what we saw, and this is not an exhaustive list of tensions, but there are some big tensions that organizations are grappling with right now. The top of the list is what has been going on for the last 2 years, right? Are we automating or are we augmenting humans? Are we helping build agility into the workforce, or are we providing stability to our workers in that time of uncertainty? Are we focused on inputs or outputs, or are we focused on outcomes? And for those of you who were in Kristen and our other colleague Ronnie's session just a little bit ago, you would have heard a little bit about additional research around the topic of productivity that we've done. And so part of what we're positing for you all is that none of these tensions are an or, it's an and. Within a given organization, I might be automating certain tasks and augmenting the humans. That might be within the same function, that might be different from one function to the next, right? That might look in early 25 different than it does in late 25, right? And all of that needs to be grounded in a business outcome and a human outcome that you're seeking to drive. So I want to do a quick kind of poll in the room as well. Hands up if your organization is trying to grapple with this first tension right now. Are you automating or augmenting? Okay, so I saw a few hands come up. Some folks might have kept your hands down because you might not want to reveal where your organization is grappling with this topic, but I think anyone who is reading anything about AI and automation capabilities right now, this is a core question, right, that folks are facing. I want to ask one more kind of question related to these polls. Who in this room is kind of grappling with helping their workforce be more agile or provide a sense of stability? Just hand up if that kind of tension resonates with you. Okay, more hands came up. Also, maybe folks felt that was a safer tension to raise your hand on. So thank you for kind of giving us a pulse check, right, that these tensions are critical to leaders across industries and sectors, different sizes of organizations. So our belief, right, our perspective from the research, and we engaged with 10,000-ish respondents, 90 plus countries, and for the second year in a row, we have broken out our survey into getting a point of view from executives and workers differently. So we have some of those contrasting viewpoints. Is that it is critical for organizations and leaders to be successful going forward as they make choices related to these tensions across kind of the spectrum to communicate that decision clearly in a way that acknowledges the business and human outcomes, right? So we're going to get into now 3 kind of overarching themes and some of the questions that will be the preview of the actual trends and all the data that you'll have access to shortly, and talk a little bit about also where the Phenom solution and capabilities and things kind of play into helping organizations navigate that. So the first is this topic of work, this theme of work. How do I ensure that the right work is being done in the optimal way, right? There has been already statements out there that says you can't just slap AI and automation on top of existing processes and expect it to unlock the millions of dollars of investment that organizations are putting into it, right? So how do I take a fresh approach to saying, what are the actual tasks and activities that should be done by a machine versus a human, right? And that machine, should that be workflow automation? Should that be middleware? Should that be AI capabilities in a solution, right? So there's a lot of nuance to that conversation that really needs to be unpacked. And then, as we drive productivity and unlock some of that worker capacity, where do we deploy that, right? Actually, I heard a CHRO last fall say, if you believe the pie won't grow, right, your focus with AI and automation is probably going to be on cost efficiency. But if you believe the pie is growing, right, you're going to unlock that worker capacity and use it for innovation and creativity and growth, right? New product lines, new geographies to enter for your organization. So how do you then think about using that new worker capacity? And the second question that we really explored to this was in the vein of stability and agility. Is one of the things that needs to happen for workers is find stability in being agile. Find stability in understanding, yes, the pace of change of these tasks, right, being impacted by AI and automation, the organization will help me reskill, upskill, move, right, deploy my career in different ways. And so a source of stability is knowing that I can successfully make those changes, right, as we navigate some of the twists and turns that are happening due to internal and external factors. So Kristen, I want to pause with kind of introducing this topic of work and share a little bit of kind of what we're seeing with Phenom and even some of this in the keynote today, right? Some of the introduction of the ontology and where this plays.
Right, I was thinking about what Mahi brought forward this morning in talking about this. This is an area that the Phenom solutions are ripe to be a part of the solutions that you're considering in reimagining work and how work gets done. If we think about the recruiting process, we'll start on the talent acquisition side. Much of what our historical norms are for our recruiters is candidate communication. And in our productivity study, we uncovered that workers can spend up to 31 hours of unproductive time doing just emails alone in a month. Now that is in and outside of what a recruiter does on a daily basis communicating with candidates. And if you can take work and automate some of those early stage opportunities where the pool is much larger, utilizing Phenom's campaigns and communication automation capabilities, you have just removed that element of the work from that person's role on a daily basis. You're driving their overall productivity, you're helping them feel more engaged and happier at work, and you're also ensuring that when they are applying edits to the communication or personalization, that it's really with fit for purpose intent, and you're removing that work for work in the sake of doing this. So that's one great area. And then you touched a little bit around the career pathing and the upskilling. Again, a great opportunity. Instead of individuals having to think about creating job descriptions and figuring out what the skills and experiences and those elements should be for that position, the AI solutions in Phenom can provide that and suggest it for you. It also removes that element of bias from a human perspective. It proposes to you while still keeping the human in the loop and ensuring that someone validates and proofs it, but it might bring forward some things from other successful candidates, other successful employees that joined you and are now high performers, in order to bring forward that as another example. So there are many ways that these solutions can really help us, simply by looking at the standard capabilities, automatically start to re-engineer and redesign that work to meet this trend.
Absolutely. So the second theme that we dug into was the theme of the workforce, right? How do I access, develop, and enable the necessary workforce? And I want to key on a few words here that we were very deliberate with before I get into the questions. The first one is access, right? I think organizations have seen over the last decade plus, right, the answer is not always, I need to hire a full-time employee. Maybe it's a part-time role. Maybe it's a contingent worker because this particular set of activities is only going to be in the organization for a period of time. Maybe it's a third-party organization that we partner with. Maybe now in 2025, it is a digital FTE of some sort, right? In a more intentional way than perhaps a workforce strategy was contemplating digital FTEs several years ago when RPA was maybe your primary kind of internal bot or digital FTE that you were managing, right? So access, develop, right? So for the humans, how do you provide those career and growth opportunities? How do they know, based on the tasks that I'm doing now, the skills that I have, where are my career opportunities, right? And then enable that journey through learning opportunities, experiences, education, et cetera. And so questions that we got into here, right? This one question we've been seeing in the market a lot: how do I get my new hires more productive that much faster? Why are they not ready to contribute, immediately? Especially as organizations, many of them today, are having certain experience requirements at the entry-level role, set of roles and jobs that someone fresh off campus or kind of 1 year into their career might not be able to meet, right? So that led us into our trend number 2, of really thinking about almost a digital or AI-empowered employee value proposition. How do I, as an organization, say, this is the very deliberate and explicit things we will do to help our people grow AI skills, understand how to shift and pivot where they spend their time in the midst of using some of those AI and automation capabilities, and how do we take that message to candidates to attract them versus maybe some of our competitors, and how do we re-recruit our people internally who are worried about their jobs or their work being disrupted by AI and automation, right? And help them understand what is that path forward. And ultimately, and certainly very germane to folks who are considering technology investments, how do I actually get the most out of my work and workforce technology, right? All of these things are multi-million-dollar investments, and making sure that you see the workers adopt said technology and adopt the full suite of capabilities that you're investing in is critical to driving those business and human outcomes. So Kristen, do you want to share a little bit about why this is so pertinent to Phenom?
Yeah, when I think especially about the value proposition, given the ability to personalize so much within the Phenom solution, again, in that automated way, you can really tailor your message to different workforce segments. You mentioned the candidates. We can show a different experience, a different alignment to those early in their career, especially if we're talking about university recruiting. And what does that Gen Z and millennial cohort really look for in an employer? And how can you showcase what you're bringing to them different than those executives that you're hiring, and in a very different high-touch type of manner, people at a very different place in their career, and how do you still showcase that? How are you using these tools then internally, as you were saying, to rebrand yourself to your employees? By focusing on the opportunities with career pathing and the opportunity to gain skills through gig opportunities and those resource groups, the solutions can once again really give you that opportunity to reset and market to your internal workforce, driving that retention. I also think about the notion of getting value out of your workforce. There are absolutely hard metrics that we can talk about from an ROI perspective when we bring these solutions into play. We can talk about that by bringing down the time to fill a position or the time to hire, you are getting somebody into the workforce and productive in a shorter amount of time, that then leads to lower payroll costs and then higher revenue generation. We can also talk about the fact that employees that are engaged and happier are obviously more apt to have higher employee engagement and therefore drive customer satisfaction as well, which is another metric that is absolutely correlatable to revenue gains. And so when we think about all of this, there are metrics and quantifiable as well as qualitative opportunities to think about the investment you're making in these solutions that will help you address in this area.
All right, and that leads us to the third broad theme that we really looked at in this year's trends report, which is that of the organization and culture. Do I have the right organization and culture to enable human performance, really to drive those business and human outcomes and human behaviors to ultimately achieve our strategy? The top one, one that folks have been really debating for probably 20 odd years at this point, why doesn't performance management work, right? And how do you separate what I think over the last decade has been an increasing trend towards more and more organizations across industries and sectors adopting pay-for-performance style compensation plans, and acknowledge there's a thing I need to do that identifies a rating that allows me to pay a bonus for backwards-looking work, right? And there's a very separate thing I need to do that says, here is what your career here looks like going forward. How do we help you grow? How do we help you develop your talent to achieve your full potential, right, as a worker within our organization or with other ambitions that you have, right? So really digging into some of those juxtapositions in this broad topic of performance management, where we've probably tried to do two things together and thus not really do either of them very well. How can we motivate people to do what needs to be done? The right work activity, adopting a new solution, demonstrating new behaviors tied to new values at our organization. Whatever that thing may be, right? Really thinking about motivation at the individual level versus some of the broad organization-wide or department-wide campaigns, right? Because if you acknowledge everything that happens at the individual level, my team member was sick today, I had a sick child, I've got, whatever's going on in life, there's actually a baseline level of change that we don't always acknowledge that people are dealing with. And then we put all the organizational initiatives on top of it, right? So how do we truly focus at that kind of unit of one level to really drive motivation in a different way? And then the last one, which has become really front and center in the last kind of year and a half as well, what happens to the role of the manager, right? There are AI agents that many organizations are rolling out or talking about from a use case perspective that says, hey, worker, if you're preparing for a tough conversation, use the AI agent for prep. or you got questions, ask the AI agent, or go to these things. And then you think about the manager often was the first point of call for many worker inquiries, right? Well, if you start redirecting certain things between the worker and the manager, how does the worker-manager relationship change? When you have many organizations looking at a potentially bigger span of control for managers, how does the manager's role change? Because they're probably now using AI capabilities to manage their direct reports, right? And where does this go, and what is the right kind of role and perspective in that role to drive value for the workers and for the organization at large? So, Kristen, you want to share a little bit about kind of the Phenom suite related to the org and culture topic?
Yeah, I think what I'll pick up on here, Kyle, is less about the platform itself, but the opportunity that you have to address these areas as you're bringing the solution into your organization. We've done other research around the concept of trust and published a report called The 4 Factors of Trust. And one of the things that we've learned through that research and survey is that employees and workers are more likely to be okay and find it acceptable that you are using their data or bringing AI into some of these processes and systems in your organization if they are aware, if you are transparent, and if you can demonstrate to them what's in it for me. So I'll pick up on the manager case. If managers see that you are elevating their experience and elevating their role by bringing these things in to help them couple and tackle performance management in a new way, but they are still the only individual in the process that can provide the empathetic part of the conversation. An AI bot can be trained to provide empathetic sounding responses, but reacting in a moment to someone who is emotional is something only a human can do. So what are those capabilities, those enduring human capabilities that will always remain inherent to the interactions that we have? And how can we bring that message into our initiatives as we're bringing the AI also? I like the concept, and Mahi touched on this morning, we're partnering together with AI and humans. We have other research that we talk about, AI is not going to replace humans, but humans partnering with AI will replace humans that are not. And so I would just encourage that as you think about your journey with these solutions, you're emphasizing and addressing the organizational and cultural impacts and the opportunities more than anything.
Absolutely. So I think we've got 5 or 6-ish minutes left. So I want to leave you with maybe 2 or 3 takeaways, and then we've got a couple mics up here for anyone that has questions. So number 1, what I opened with, these are not HR-only topics, right? These topics of, are my workers, are my leaders doing the right work? Do I have the right workforce to achieve my business objectives? Do I have the right organization and culture in place? That's your CEO is thinking about that. Your board of directors is asking the C-suite those questions, right? So these are important for everyone in this room to know and understand what their C-suite and board of directors are grappling with. Number 2, when you're facing these tensions, these internal and external tensions, what's important is to make a choice. Because not acting, inaction is a decision in and of itself, right? And in a time of uncertainty, being able to at least put a choice out there and explain it to your human stakeholders, internal and external, will build the credibility so that as you maybe need to make some of those strategy pivots, at least people had a rational understanding for where you started and why, right? And number 3, as kind of Kristen touched on the org and culture front, no technology is going to solve all of these things, but it's really important to understand the technology capabilities, like those that Phenom brings forward, how they're going to solve some business and human challenges and drive business and human outcomes, and then wrap that around with the messaging and that motivation at the unit of one kind of change campaign to get your workers to adopt it and drive it forward. So thank you for joining us for this preview of our 2025 Global Human Capital Trends Report. The report is launching this month, so I encourage you to certainly dig in. You can stop by our booth and kind of get an early sign up so that it gets access to you right away. But also happy to take a couple questions at either of the microphones if anyone has them. Otherwise, afterwards, we will be over in the corner and happy to chat a little bit as well. Absolutely.
Did your research show that separating performance and career development conversations is recommended?
So I think it starts with the term performance, right? Because some folks will say the term performance actually is very much a career conversation, right? How am I explicitly performing against the roles and requirements of what I'm being asked to do? And how is that performance then enabling me to know what my development opportunities are or what my career potential opportunities are, right? Some of it actually is, if I use this clarity is kindness phrase, right? People tend to be very nice in performance management conversations, and they don't actually say, you did not meet these 3 requirements of the role, and you met these 3. Therefore, you got this rating, which means this is your bonus, right? So some of it is actually we need to get more explicit with what we mean in the organization for what is performance. Is it backwards looking, and therefore what we're using to determine a rating and bonus, or are we talking about forward looking, right? Because that conflation is really what's been hurting kind of the performance management topic broadly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yep. 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 Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, absolutely. So the question was, there's a lot happening in the world, period. And how do you motivate folks when there are all these other things impacting even their desire or interest in being motivated, right? And thank you for calling that out. So part of what the research was kind of digging into is the fact that we don't often acknowledge all those other things. Some of those are just baseline items, like I mentioned, right? Like my kid is sick, my spouse is on a work trip, I had a new hire join my team and I have to spend time ramping them up. I had someone else depart. It's budget cycle, and as a manager, I gotta dig into that. Like all those things are just distracting you. Maybe not, they're taking your attention. And then you throw in everything else, right, in the organization. And then you throw in what's happening in the world, right? And so some of it is, one, we actually have to get much more explicit at acknowledging the baseline level of disruption that's happening as you're thinking about individual motivation, right? And you have to acknowledge that Monday through Friday, we're not bringing the same energy levels every week, every month, every quarter. So if I acknowledge that, right, and then I acknowledge these things that are going on in the world, which every organization will have a different stance as to what they choose to discuss internally, but you can still acknowledge that there's things in the world. What does that now mean for my strategy, right? How do I actually create a strategy that acknowledges some of these disruptions and then drives forward? Because that might say, if I know I'm only getting 5% of your attention versus the 100% I would like you to give while I'm rolling out a new technology solution that's gonna have whatever the impact may be, how do I approach it much more differently in a 5%? So some of that is where do you then take that type of approach forward in a different way, at motivating at the unit of one, acknowledging all those things that impact us as humans differently. Yeah, thanks for your question. Other thoughts or questions? And we probably have like, I think, 1-ish minute before we will get ushered off the stage so that they can clear the room for the next. Okay, well, thank you again for joining. And you can find us over here or at booth number 1 upstairs over the course of the next couple of days. Thanks all.
Thank you all.